Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Grace Hill's last webinar of the year, Unlock Powerful Survey Data to Win in 2024. Today, you will hear from multifamily and commercial survey experts on how to use powerful survey data from surveys to build a plan and win in 2024. Speaking of winning, we'll also be giving away three $50 Amazon gift cards throughout our session. We'll begin shortly, but as we wait for others to jump on, I wanted to quickly point out a few things on your GoToWebinar control panel. Now, if you do not see the control panel, it may be minimized. You can show or hide the panel using the red arrow at the top. Hopefully, you have all joined with audio by this point, but if you have trouble or lose your connection, you can always switch to the phone call option and dial in to hear the audio that way. Feel free to submit your questions throughout our presentation using the questions box at the bottom. We will have time for questions before we wrap up today. Lastly, don't forget to download the attached flyers from the handout section of the control panel for more information on the solutions and topics presented here today. So with that said, let me introduce our host, Amy Cortez. Amy has led the Grace Hill team for 2 years now, with some of her strengths being challenging the status quo with new ideas and solutions, all while conquering the world one season at a time in home decor. And let me tell you, she is the master.
Well, thank you, Kayla. And I know we still have people joining us. We're just about a minute away here to start the webinar. So I do want to say thank you for the introduction, Kayla. And I do love home decor, as you can tell in my background. I love to express myself through all the seasons of the holidays in decorations. So we're going to go ahead. We're right at the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and start our webinar. Thank you for joining today. First, I'd like to welcome our presenters. We have Jay and Paul with us today. Jay knows what it takes to elevate property performance and reduce operating risk in the multifamily area. Other strengths include aligning solutions to clients' needs, all while arranging his Saturday errands around college football. And I know he's a huge Buckeye fan, right, Jay? Go Bucks. He knows what it takes to build not only a football winning season, but a multifamily operations season. So we like to have a little fun around here. Next, we have Paul joining us today. He's our commercial survey expert who really analyzes a lot of data on an ongoing basis. And he does it across the globe. He's always been quite the traveler himself and always making plans for his next trip. So if you need any travel advice, Paul is also your man. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So we're going to start today by elaborating on why collecting data is so important for a business. So Paul, I'm going to start with you. What do you feel really is the value in measuring and aggregating tenant, resident, and employee experience data?
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for the fun intro. And also, this is a really great question because anybody can run a survey, right? But it really takes a lot of expertise and effort to analyze the results and actually act on that data, right? And so what I can tell you is that our survey data will help real estate companies focus their resources, whether that's on-site staff, off-site staff, third-party service providers, or even your corporate human capital, right? Even your corporate team. And so ultimately, what's more important than just sending out surveys is being able to collect it, harvest it, and analyze it in a way that is visually easy to understand, appealing, and enables action. And so I have two screenshots here on the screen. We have our Kingsley portal, the one towards the bottom here. We also have our mobile app for the Kingsley portal. And so that's our solution for the commercial and the multifamily resident and tenant data. And then towards the back of the screenshot here on the upper left corner, you see our new employee dashboard, which is really geared towards synthesizing that data and those results. And so the reason that I'm calling out these tools is because they're really useful for a number of stakeholders. And so whether it's, again, on-site property teams, mid-level managers, or even executive and C-suite, all of our survey data is at your fingertips, right? And so to go back and answer your original question, I would say that the value in surveying is being able to act on that data in real time and having real-time data to enable decision-making and ultimately make the process of managing a real estate portfolio a little bit easier.
I think that's a great point, Paul, and thank you for that information. So I know we're just getting started here, but I think we want to do a giveaway. So Kayla is behind the scenes here, and she's keeping up with all the live attendees. So even if you joined a few minutes late, you are going into the pool that we'll be drawing from. So we are going to go ahead, Kayla, and pull the winner. The first winner is Paul C. So Paul C., congratulations. You are a winner of an Amazon gift card, and thank you for joining today. We'll reach out to you a little bit later on to confirm your contact information so that we can make sure we send it to the right place. So we're going to start now with a poll. So before we go any further, I do want to get a pulse on who's on the call today. So our first poll is going to ask you, what market segments do you serve? Is it multifamily only? Is it commercial only? Or is it a mix of both portfolios, multifamily and commercial? So we're going to give everyone just a little bit of time here. We'll wait just a couple more seconds to make sure we're getting some responses. Okay, so our results are 53% on the call are multifamily, 21% is commercial, and 26% is a mix. So those are really interesting stats, and we absolutely are going to talk to both multifamily and commercial as we go throughout our webinar. So everyone is in luck because we do have information, we have data, we have stats for everyone that's joined the call today. Great Health product Kingsley offers survey data both for multifamily and commercial. And just to kind of review a couple of the areas that we focus on is first and foremost annual surveys. And this is both for tenants if you're in the commercial space and residents if you're in the multifamily space. We also have employee annual surveys that are available and moments that matter. And really what that is executed based on if someone has just onboarded or if someone has just trained. We also have pulse survey. So there's those times where you just want to get a pulse of something that maybe happens in your work environment and you can execute those. And then ongoing residential surveys. And that is really based on an event. So we've got move in, we've got the prospecting, the move out, the pre-renewal, and the work order. So an extreme advantage of using Kingsley Survey is really our ability to collect all of the data of all the surveys that we launch for our customers and build the benchmark for you to compare how you're performing within your portfolio, within your region. And we're going to share just a few things that we're currently seeing in the data with you. So Jay, can you share some data insights we are currently seeing in multifamily in the Kingsley Index and benchmarking?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about this, I will preface that we're talking about 2023 over 2022, and specifically looking really at the first half, right? We're obviously wrapping up the second half of 2023. So really kind of looking at data that we obtained through that first half of 2023. First, you'll notice that overall satisfaction is trending upwards. On the resident side, it's up about 1.3%, as you see there, but also the prospect is up. So just shy of 1 percentage mark there, it's about 0.9% on the prospect that is also trending up in overall satisfaction. But when we look at actually your prospect or resident's journey, again, from 2022 to 2023, you see some other stats there on the screen. So there is higher satisfaction with some key kind of move-in elements, right? So the move-in day, which we know is all important, it sets the tone really for that time that that resident's going to be with you. Key aspects of the leasing and even the value for amount paid. And I think when we're really talking about that value for amount paid, rents were really kind of higher nationally through the first half. They were up about 2%. And that's really great in the first half of 2023, given the fact that there's a lot of net new absorption that's in the market right now. So rents remained pretty high in that first half. So, again, those leasers seeing kind of higher rents across the market understood the value for what they were getting since everybody was kind of up. From there, though, we look at maintenance, which for me, I used to be on the property management side, and I would always remind my staff that my maintenance crew, honestly, were sometimes really the deciding factor in whether or not somebody renewed. And actually, the NAA produced a study that said 60% of renters choose to renew because they're pleased with maintenance and upkeep. So the good news there, 2023 over 2022, we are seeing an increase in higher maintenance satisfaction. Finally, that pre-renewal, right? So overall satisfaction has increased by about 0.6% when we talk about. However, the value for the amount has actually declined. And I think that's interesting if you kind of contrast that against that move-in experience, right? So your prospects are going, hey, maybe rent's up, we're expecting that, so we really think we're getting some great value for the price that they're paying. But once they're in, and obviously expectations begin to change, are you making meaningful changes, right? Over 200,000 units were delivered in the first half of 2023, which is really more delivery than we've seen in any of the recent years. So that's really driving things like, do your current residents see the value for what they're being asked, particularly on renewal changes? But when we go a little bit further than that, while overall satisfaction has increased, the fact is it doesn't mean that you don't need to look at other areas, within your operations, right, to make sure that we continue to achieve that high overall satisfaction. One of the ones that we've been looking at is an overall sense of community. And the overall sense of community has actually steadily declined since the onset of the pandemic. So that rate of decline is beginning to level out a little, with most markets remaining flat within about 2% of 2022, but still overall has steadily declined. We're actually seeing about 7 percentage points below what that same KPI sense of community would have been in 2019. However, just a little insight for you all on the call. If you happen to be looking at or own or manage assets in St. Louis, San Antonio, or the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, congratulations. Those areas are actually seeing the highest significant increase in the sense of community. Bottom 3 markets. So if you operate here, this could really be a differentiator for you all. If you're looking to invest there, sense of community could really be a value driver for you. Those bottom 3 that have seen the most significant decline in sense of community are Minneapolis, St. Paul, the greater Charlotte area there in North Carolina, and the Chicago area as well. And then finally, to wrap that up, just wanted to share, we are a trusted partner of the NMHC, and we were delighted to present this year's renter preference survey. You can actually scan that QR code there to learn more or even purchase it. However, just a couple key dangling some carrots, if you will. So AC, washer, dryer, and unit, high-speed internet continue to be core amenities that really residents have come to expect. However, we are seeing needs changing, right? So first of all, nearly 2/3 of your renters say that they work remote part of the time. And as such, it's driving things like over 80% cited reliable cell service as an absolute need. 70% said that they needed secure self-service 24/7 package access and covered parking. The one for me, again, having been on the property management side, the return of the car wash area was actually mentioned. So I know there for a while we all had car washes, and I think we kind of watched that wane. But renters are really saying that they want a car wash area or some kind of mobile car service as part of the amenity package. All right. I'm not sure if Amy has lost her audio or not.
No, we're gonna, sorry about that. I was waiting for you to switch the slide here. So we're going to go
Oh,
into
yeah.
then the commercial side of things. So Paul, can you maybe share with us some of the data that you're seeing on the commercial space?
Absolutely. And Jay, thanks for going into so much detail on multifamily. In commercial, we have a few different sectors to talk about, so I'm going to stay a little bit more high level. But I'll share a little bit of what I'm really seeing in each of these on the screen. So for office, the main thing that we're seeing in the industry is that office tenants are really looking to their owners and operators for support in bringing the workers back to the office, right? So as we all think about office utilization and occupancy rates, and as we've been tracking that over the since the pandemic, right? Your tenants are also tracking those same figures. And so we do have some stats that gather all of that information on our survey, and I have a quick one here to share. So 60% of office tenants in the US are saying that just more than half of their employees are in the workplace daily. That still leaves a lot of room for growth, right? And ultimately, in terms of satisfaction and renewals, what we're seeing is that these shifts in not only the amount of people that have returned to the office, but how that office space is being used is actually driving a bit of a decline in satisfaction with value for amount paid. And so when we think about amenities and the increased importance of amenities to entice those workers back, and when we think about the different layouts that office tenants have to deal with, right, with different levels of occupancy and return, the more that you can serve as a partner really to those tenants, the better that your satisfaction will be, and the renewals will follow suit. And so nationwide, we have seen renewals are steadily increasing. So for 2023, we're at about 2/3% likelihood to renew. That's a really nice uptick over the past couple of quarters, the past couple of years. And really what we're seeing is a big decline in uncertainty, which absolutely maxed out in about 2020, 2021. Now for industrial, it's a very different story, right? So for industrial, there was a massive lack of supply in 2021, kind of ongoing into 2022. And so what we're seeing here is that development seems to be catching up to demand, or has definitely caught up in certain markets. And we're seeing that in renewable intents, right? So when we looked at the renewal intentions in 2021 and even 2022, we saw incredibly strong renewal rates in the industrial sector. We've seen that level off a bit as the market seems to be correcting itself and supply and demand are equalizing there. And so going forward, delivering high quality service and high quality buildings is going to be very important to compete in that softer market. And so in terms of those two areas, we've actually seen satisfaction with service delivery in the industrial sector continue to increase over the past 4 years. So you've seen a really nice, consistent uptick in the satisfaction with those property management offerings. And what we're actually hearing and we're seeing in the data too, is that our premier industrial clients are really focusing on sustainability initiatives and also amenities and upgrading the building in general to continue to drive that rent growth and that occupancy. Now, retail, this is another one. Again, these are all totally different. And so for retail, we've actually seen satisfaction remain flat year over year. So that overall satisfaction has not varied too much since the pandemic. But this has had one of the biggest changes in renewals. And we've actually seen a dramatic improvement in renewal intentions here since 2020. And the areas that are driving that are actually the areas that really directly impact the retailer's financial performance. And so what I mean by that is the characteristics of the center that will help the retailer succeed. So number of footfalls on properties, the marketing efforts that are provided by the property management company or the owner, right? Parking, security, tenant mix, all of those different measures that we include on our surveys that impact the ability for that center really to be a good source of financial success for the different retailers that are there. And actually, I mentioned center marketing efforts, and I would say that's the number one area that I've seen grow in the past few years. We're seeing a big uptick in the number of tenants that are indicating their property offers some sort of marketing. We're also seeing some really interesting shifts in the satisfaction with those measures. And so what I mean by that could be on-site marketing events. It could be other on-site marketing efforts, right? More traditional kind of physical marketing efforts, and also e-marketing. So social media, web-based marketing, all of those offerings are really trending upwards in terms of the importance and also the amount that we're seeing in the industry. So it'll be really interesting to see how building owners and building managers are able to improve the retail sector. And then last, in medical, we've seen a lot of consolidation in the industry here. And what continues to be a challenge and has actually continued to decline since the onset of COVID is satisfaction with property management. So we're seeing that trend down consecutively for 3 or 4 years now. And we're seeing value for amount paid trend down right with that. So again, I think that really ties that value proposition of the service delivery that you're able to provide to your tenants is critical to delivering a high value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we know we've thrown a lot at you, and we are going to do a giveaway just to make sure everyone is still with us. So we've got another Amazon gift card, and Kayla is going to put everyone in it that is in attendance and randomly select Tracy H. So Tracy H, you are our second Amazon gift card winner. Congratulations, and we'll make sure we get that to you afterwards. And then we're going to do a poll. So lot of data that we gave you as it relates to what we are seeing. What we want to understand is who on the call is currently surveying their customers and employees. So tell us a little bit about that. Have you started making the investment in the data to understand what it's going to show you and your properties? And these are all multi-select. So are you doing employee surveys? Are you doing annual tenant surveys, ongoing residents, GRES benchmarking, or maybe you're doing all the above? So select any and all that apply to you. And we're going to gather the results here. We'll give you just another few seconds here to respond. Again, it is multi-select, so if you're doing multiples, please make sure you're selecting those. All right, so wow, we've got quite an array here. So 47% are doing, employee surveys, which is outstanding. Annual tenant surveys is also 47%. Ongoing residents is 35%. GRES benchmarking is 18%, and 6% are doing all the above. So congratulations to those of you on the call that are doing all the above. So we know anyone can do a survey and get results back, kind of how Paul touched on this a little bit earlier. And there's certainly options that are in the market that are free or really, really cheap. So Jay, I'm going to shoot a question at you here. Can you explain why Kingsley Survey is critical when property is maybe considering doing a survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So super excited. This is definitely one of the loves of what I get to do, and that is to demo part of our solution. So if you don't happen to have our survey solution today, it's see behind the screen, if you will, a little bit. We are looking today, we're going to look specifically at a commercial dashboard. However, a lot of you had mixed portfolios, right? So the good news is for those that do, it lives in the same platform, right? We want you to be able to really have those same kind of metrics to be able to compare your commercial portfolio with your multifamily portfolio. But again, looking at commercial, and when I think about selecting a survey partner, I really think of 3 things. So ease of implementation and delivery, the way that it is delivered to your residents or your tenants. Again, how efficient that is and the ease in doing it. The experience of your provider, right? So certainly somebody who's been in the industry has experience in interpreting data. Special shout out if anybody on the call today is part of kind of like our design team and our survey team. I've had a chance to watch the way they even comb over our survey questions year over year to ensure that it's really asking for meaningful data in a succinct way, but that's going to get you the data that provides an ROI is that. But for me, the differentiator for us too is really ease of understanding data. Again, like Amy said, there are definitely people out there that run surveys, and they can run surveys. But sometimes that data is just dumped, and it's now your responsibility to kind of weed through that and make heads and tails. What I really love about our platform is the way that we kind of aggregate that data for you. So let me show you just a little bit really quick what that means. Again, we are looking at a commercial sector here, and specifically this is our reporting dashboard that's coming up now. So I'll tell you, when I'm looking at this, I like to explain our system by really kind of telling a story. So if I am a commercial client and I'm looking at my dashboard, maybe today I really want to look at a specific property. So today, I'm going to look specifically at office property 210. Okay, yours would obviously have an actual office property name there, but we're going to apply that so that we can really see just how that commercial location is doing. You notice there's a couple different ways you can slice and dice the data. You can look at what we call the Kingsley Index. Stay tuned. I know Paul's going to do a great job at introducing that. But maybe for this exercise, you just want to know how that, office space is doing against the rest of your portfolio. So really here, you'll notice some really strong numbers in terms of management overall satisfaction, general overall satisfaction, even renewal intention. However, we're beginning to see some decrease in maintenance and engineering overall satisfaction, right? So looking first at large KPIs, because while your overall satisfaction could be really strong today for that particular location, that maintenance and engineering is by far, we know, going to trickle down. So as we come down, we kind of begin to get a little bit more granular in the detail that we show. So one here are kind of big bucket areas, and where that location, since I'm at a specific commercial location, how that compares against the rest of your portfolio. I did want to stop briefly and say, for our multifamily friends that are on this is the same exact way that you would see your data. We're applying it to a commercial division right now, but this is the same way that we would begin to slice and dice your data as well. So please stay with me, right? So for this location, things like cleaning, security, exterior property features, parking facilities, I immediately begin to hone in on, even interior property features. And then finally at the bottom here, we call out your greatest differentiators. So specifically the opportunities, here's where we're looking at, right? Quality of cleaning. Maybe that's a vendor change. Maybe that is some training for your teams. Landscaping, right? Perhaps now that becomes part of your CapEx spend for 2024. Exterior experience. Maybe again, you've got some value add projects there type of deal. But even besides just those big bucket items, we also get down to the nitty gritty. So these question details is really going to get super granular. And again, this is what I say when I think it's a true differentiator from us, from a dump to really helping you understand this data. So if we're looking at security, right? What areas do we need to pull on? In this situation, it's pretty much all of them, right? But security personnel, we've got a concern with. Again, maybe that's a vendor selection that needs to change. After hours security, not great there. Maybe that's part of a contract that we ultimately need to kind of look at or negotiate type of deal. And then finally, when we're looking at reporting, while I am a quantitative data geek and I love that part, there's real value in those open-ended questions as well. So we do ask that as well. You can certainly see those, view them, export them as CSV, Excel files, whatever it may be. So that's one of the really great parts that I love about us. Another thing that I do love too is the ability to close the loop. So again, regardless of the type of operator, multifamily, commercial, the fact is, whether there's a hand raise or you're able to quickly look and see maybe who's not looking to renew or who is unhappy, let's close that loop. Let's work it proactively, right? So here, we see somebody who is unlikely to renew, they are not satisfied. We'll give you the full transcript to review. That way you walk into a conversation to close that loop, to make meaningful gains, knowing exactly what the pain points are of that particular tenant or resident. And then finally, the last thing I'll show you here is just our overall dashboard. And what I want to draw your attention to here is our KPIs again. So again, we're still in the commercial sector here. So these are those main KPIs that kind of align on the reporting, not kind of, they do align what we saw on the reporting dashboard. And I'm going to pivot here. I know we're going to pivot here to Paul, but I really want to talk about the strength of numbers. Because I think when you really begin to look at these ratings and what they mean and how you're able to compare that, let's talk about what that means. So for us on the multifamily side, Kingsley surveys approximately 7 million different surveys, 5 of the top 6 in MHC. We have a large market share of your top real estate investors as well in the commercial sector. So all of that really leads to some meaningful pieces of information to help you drive operations in what we define as a benchmark.
Absolutely. And those are big numbers, and that's a lot of information that we're getting on an ongoing basis. So Jay mentioned, Paul, just a little bit about the Kingsley Index. So can you talk a little bit about what it is and why it is so critically important for everyone to see?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as the audience probably picked up by now, the Kingsley Index is our proprietary benchmark. And we pull from millions and millions of data points to really provide our customers and our users of our platform insight into how they perform versus their competitors. And so in addition to benchmarking you against your peers, right, your competition, the KI also helps our clients understand how is the industry shifting, right? So we regenerate a KI yearly generally for most portfolios. And so you can see not only how are you doing in this point in time, but you can start seeing how are you trending versus how is the industry trending. And then ultimately, the KI helps you set actionable goals for your property teams and your portfolio based on these industry benchmarks, right? And so right here, the screen that Jay is showing, without getting too much into the details, is just a snapshot of some of the different variables that go into tailoring the KI for each client. So we look at property type, we look at the geography of where your properties and your portfolio is, we look at property class, and we also take into account how far back do we want to go. So do we go back 12 months, 24 months, et cetera. One key thing I really want to point out here is that all of our benchmarks vary by property type. So we would never compare an office property to a retail property. We would never compare multifamily to a commercial. All of our questionnaires differ. Tenant expectations and experiences differ by property type. And so the KI is also completely segmented. Jay, as I just mentioned, multifamily, is there anything you want to add related to multifamily specifically that might be different than commercial?
No, I think you did a great job, Paul, really of kind of doing it. I think for us, just keep in mind that our KPIs are going to be a little bit different, right? Again, what I showed you was the commercial. So for us, for example, we're going to talk about community impression. But I think the main thing that I would really talk about on the multifamily side is we offer those ongoing touch points that Amy kind of alluded with, the prospect, the move-in, the work order, the pre-renewal. And that ongoing touch point really allows you to have a goal for that on-site team and to work that relationship throughout the life cycle of your resident.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those are great information that you shared. And the Kingsley Index and the numbers that Jay was sharing on how many surveys we get and then how you can utilize that as kind of your benchmark going forward. So important and so critical. So we're going to change gears just a little bit. We all know that employee turnover rates are a concern, right? They're a concern everywhere, but especially in the real estate industry, they're even bigger of a concern. And just a stat I wanted to share, the average multifamily property manager turnover rate is roughly 33% per year, which is really 11% above the national turnover rate. So in November, Grace Hill did relaunch a new platform specifically for employee surveys, just to help understand what's going on that's creating this turnover. So Paul, I'm going to turn this kind of to you and ask, what data can you share that the Kingsley Index is showing us as it relates to what's happening in that workforce right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. And that stat, that 33% is really staggering, right? So we all watch the news. We know business costs are high. We know employee culture is shifting. And so I have a couple of interesting findings on the screen here from what we've seen in our employee surveys. And the first one really is the top left here. So the number of employees who are happy at their company is steadily declining in the multifamily industry, right? And it's consistently seen a downward decline, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that trend's going forward. Also, you know, almost just as interesting is that less than 2/3 of workers say everyone is held equally accountable. And so one of the nice things that we're able to do when we slice and dice our employee surveys is drill down by division, drill down by manager, and see really, are there certain demographics that are more susceptible to some of these negative marks? Are there certain departments that might need training? Are there certain leaders who might need some additional training or some feedback, right? And then on the right, some other really big picture, you know, critical measures to be aware of in your company, right? So 31% of employees don't feel that their stress levels are manageable, right? So almost a third of employees are currently overwhelmed and they're having issues managing their day-to-day stress at work. And in 2023 specifically, so 2 new trends for this year are shown in the bottom right here. So leadership showing compassion during challenging times saw a sharp decline, and so did leadership supporting a healthy work-life balance. So these are all some key measures that are interesting to track at the portfolio level, but more important to track, I would say, at the team level or department level to really act, provide feedback and training where that might be necessary, and ultimately support your employees to reduce that turnover and bring down some of that expense related to it.
Absolutely. And what I really love about what you share, Paul, is it's all actionable. The data that we're seeing is all actionable once you have it identified. So identifying it is really critical. You can complete that action plan of what that looks like. So I think we're going to kind of stay there for a moment. And Jay, can you maybe give us a glimpse of what data you see on the newly launched Kingsley Employee Survey?
I can, and I apologize. Apparently, we've been having such great discussion. I somehow have been logged out, which is not a bad security feature there. So give me just a minute and allow me to log back in. So
we just wanted to give a glimpse of security here is what we were trying to do.
There you go. Right, exactly. 100%. You know, as Amy had said, we have had an employee survey for quite a while. And the good news is, because of that, we have Kingsley Index benchmarks as well, right? So again, you're really able to compare yourselves again with those people that really maybe you compete against for top talent. And let's be very honest in multifamily. When you look at multifamily, the statistics show that while obviously we are welcoming and people do come into the fold, the amount of different companies that a multifamily employee works for is pretty staggering. We tend to sometimes really jump within the industry just to other companies. So how do you keep that person who is phenomenal on your team, right? And so really this employee engagement allows you to do that. So as Amy said, we have the annual. We believe that is a great baseline, right? To quickly know where you're at so you can begin to plan how to affect those things. And then really we can measure those year over year. We do have the pulse surveys that Amy also alluded to. We believe those are ongoing dialogues, right? So you've identified some issues with your annual survey. Let's do a pulse survey to continue to have that conversation, know if you're moving the needle. And then finally, we have those moments that matter. And I read another sobering statistic. I think it was upwards of like 60% of people leave within the first 90 days. And I will tell you, I've talked to a couple of my multifamily peers who are like, Jay, right now, if we can get them to show up on day one and stay past 90 days, it's a win, right? So for example, our moments that matter for onboarding, we're gonna survey it 3 days, 7 days, 30 days, 90 days. So you can quickly hone in on what the experiences of those new hires. So again, we not only retain, but we really, attract, but that we also retain your top talent. And kudos for those of you that are here. I will say again, this is a fairly new relaunch for us. And while we have had the pleasure of demoing this for some clients, this is really kind of our at large for you to be able to see this. So as we come in, there's going to be filters throughout. You can drill down by corporate versus on-site, by what is my maintenance team, even these things like pivot tables. What is my on-site male versus female field type of deal? So throughout, but as we look at some of the key metrics you see here, response rates, right? So is the data meaningful? I want you to see that if I looked at this and it was a glowing review and this was my company, but only 10% of people had responded, I probably would say, let's pause, let's celebrate that really great feedback thus far, but let's pause till we get some meaningful response rates, right? You can see your engagement score. So the engagement score for us is the percentage who are actively engaged. That means that they agree or strongly agree with your key engagement questions. So here as an organization, I'm at a 49% engagement score. I'm going to tell you as a C-suite executive, I would pause for a minute. That means I've got that 51 swing of potential people who aren't really sure, right, where they're going. This engagement landscape you can change it to a bunch of different segments. But here you'll kind of see again, how does that breakdown lead to? So here's your 49 with highly engaged. Just so you know, partially disengaged for us is a mixed bag. It means they've agreed with some, they've disagreed with others. Maybe they're just middle of the road, neutral on everything. Disengaged, those are the real ones right now that I've got a red flag for, right? So those are strongly disagree across the board type of deal. Here, just a couple different ways to show you ways that we can slice and dice data. So here we're looking at some of those key engagement questions, but across age ranges, right? So again, my 50 to 55 look pretty strong, right? But my other ones, 20 to 25, 30 to 35 right now specifically, are all kind of trending down in that red area, right? So where do I need to begin to really move that needle? Hopefully what you're gonna find here is you kind of enact this and you start, getting ideas and data to back that up, is these will begin to level off. You'll see some areas turn to green and then some areas that are still in red. And you're like, all right, we need to go back here and rework this. You'll see too here, we have our key engagement questions. So these are the ones that are kind of like the big bucket items, right? And I love the fact that, the kind of the data that Paul had shared, because you're gonna see things line up here, even based on those stats that he gave you. And then of course, for me, data without action, I mean, at the end of it, it's just data, right? But it's, to me, and I've heard this from a client who said, we did an employee engagement survey about 3 years ago, and we did nothing with our findings. And they will readily admit that there is nothing more detrimental to a culture than when you do an employee engagement and do nothing. But we want to help you know where to start. So we're going to call out top 3 areas of strength and opportunities that you can immediately begin to dive into. As we move on, just a couple more glimpses behind the curtain here. Let's look at the score tab. So score tab, if you remember when we were looking at the resident and tenant side, we got really granular, right? We talked about no data dump. Let's figure out how to aggregate these things. Same principle here, right? So here is an ongoing kind of touch point in terms of like pulse and that type of deal. But let's look, for example, on manager drivers, right? If you see nothing here, it just means that we haven't met a threshold to be able to release that for a confidentiality score. But here are the different areas, right? Even if we look at senior leadership, here in my fake company, we trust our senior leaders. We believe that the senior leaders have the best interest of us at heart in terms of the company. However, that doesn't necessarily translate to keeping us informed about that, or then the action of showing they cared, right? So now we immediately, do you do an all hands call? Do you do a town meeting? How do you increase the transparency to your internal stakeholders to help drive that number particularly? And then finally, the last little bit that I'll show you here, again, as we said, this is a great tool, but we want you to use this tool. So we do have action plans also available. So for example, here, this is a company strategy communication. You'll notice we're able to set who the owner is, what stage it's in, even subtask. So now we make accountability a focus as well, but we also deliver those things right in the ability to do small chunks that we begin to move that needle little by little by little as we go through. And then we just start this cycle over again, that based on what we've implemented here, we go back into that engagement model. How's that affecting our engagement score or our key engagement questions, et cetera?
Awesome. Great explanation and a great visibility there, Jay. Every time I see this demo, I get more and more excited of just all of the things that you can check from a data standpoint. So we did really focus our webinar today around the power of understanding a true pulse of really what's happening both in commercial and in multifamily. And we shared a lot of data points. Both Paul and Jay gave you a lot to think about and a lot of visibility to see. We hope that that really helps you continue thinking about how a survey for your tenants, for your residents, for your employee would really allow you to build a more strategic plan as you're heading into 2024. I always give the analogy of you don't go out to your car, get behind the driver's seat, turn it on, and put a blindfold on and start driving, right? Why would you do that with your business when you've got the ability to see the data as to what's happening? You're removing that blindfold and you're driving your car, right? So, you know, with that, it kind of leads me into, Jay, you've been in multifamily, as we said at the beginning, for many, many years. If you really had to sum up the power of Kingsley Survey, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this succinct, right? But I will share that when I first entered multifamily, I will never forget that one of my mentors told me my number one job was to protect the owner's asset. And I think that's true whether you're commercial, multifamily, whatever we do. But we do tackle that protection in a variety of ways, right? And we've touched on a lot of those areas today. So for me, Kingsley Survey in the multifamily sector helps me understand key areas that help me drive to protect the asset and also how to wisely invest, which is part of our fiduciary responsibility. Because initiatives without data, honestly, are just guessing games. It also provides you with a total asset management strategy. We firmly believe that data that you're going to find, again, whether commercial or multifamily, are going to help you in policy development or refinement, training gaps by different levels, you know, where you want to do value adds, even market research for future investments. For my multifamily people, that's maybe listening to prospect feedback about locations that you're considering developing next to sister sites, et cetera. You know, we talked about the Kingsley Index, and for me, that is huge. So, you know, as we look at 2024, and I'll wrap up with this, when we look at 2024, we know that 2024 definitely is going to have its challenges on the multifamily side. There's an incredible number of delivery that is coming. Occupancies are beginning to wane a little bit. That Kingsley Index allows you to compare with your peers and who you're competing against. We're all going to be out there fighting for every resident, every reduced churn, and really ways to differentiate against that. You know, I also, one of my dear friends who is still on the property management side said, look, when we're looking at implementing things in 2024, that new software initiative, platform, whatever, has to directly tie back to an area in the budget because it is probably going to be a little bit leaner of a fiscal year. But here with Survey, you're quickly, I mean, to me, that's the ultimate tool to be able to affect those different line areas because we can look at how do we push rents? How do we decrease vacancy loss? How do you get gain to lease? How do you decrease employee churn budget numbers, et cetera? So I think honestly to head into 2024, and I'll just end with what I said, that initiatives without data is just guessing games. And obviously we want better for our companies.
Yeah, and it's a roadmap, right? If you're going to invest money and money's tight in 2024 because occupancies are low, are you investing in the right things? What does it matter when people move into an apartment? What do they want? And there's no way to guess and guess correctly. So Paul, I also special. I've got a multifamily expert and I've got a commercial expert on the call today. So you've been working with real estate for several years and you work with a lot of really large investment groups. So what would you describe as the biggest aha moment that you've seen people have when you're showing them their results?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's been connecting the dots between all of the various service delivery metrics and the overall financial performance of the property, right? And seeing how all of the little initiatives that Jay mentioned, how all of that ties to overall satisfaction with management, overall satisfaction with the building, right? The building ops team, and how all of those different components are so correlated to renewals. And ultimately, time and time again, we start seeing patterns repeat themselves. The managers and the service providers who excel in those metrics tend to drive the highest overall satisfaction at the highest renewals. The opposite is true too. And for me, it's just been really interesting to see that pattern repeat itself across the industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we're going to go into our third poll. I hope everyone's still on the call and they're still engaged, right? It's really hard when we can't hear everyone. So we're going to go into our third and final poll. So tell me, based on what we spoke about today, which of these survey types would you consider adding to your survey program in 2024? And it's multiple options can be selected here. So if you've got more than one, you could choose between employee, annual tenant, ongoing residents, or all the above. So we'll give it just a few seconds here. Let you respond to that. Or if there's even just one that you would like to learn more about, maybe. Okay, so it looks like we're going to close the poll here. So it looks like the area that people want to add is employee. I can certainly understand that with that staggering data that we provided. 31% said annual tenant surveys, 38% said ongoing resident surveys, and 31% said all the above. I don't think we could have got a much more even mix of answers there. So, all right. So by joining our webinar today, you're going to be able to receive 2 private promotions, and it's only for those of you that are actually on the call and attended. So if you want to drop the word survey in the chat, we're trying to get some engagement here. So please, 1 or 2 people, tell me if you're interested in survey. We actually, and I think Jay, we've got a slide of the discounts maybe that we're going to show. We've got 15% off of survey if it's something that you're interested in signing up for by the end of the month. Now, obviously, we're not going to launch that survey until next year, but that's if you want to get started based on, I think 38% of you said that. So if you want to get started, if you want somebody to follow up with you immediately after the call, oh, thank you, Marta. Thank you for responding. I know somebody is out there and that they're listening. So thank you for responding. And then also we talked about the employee survey and the launch that we had in November. We do have early bird pricing right now. It's going to go through the end of the year. We will share that with you if that's something that you're interested in. So if you want to, again, drop either in chat or in questions the word employee survey, we certainly will follow up with you right afterwards and make sure that we're sharing that promo pricing before we head into 2024 with the regular pricing. Okay, I'm not seeing the slide, but I promise you those are the promos that we are offering for you guys. So before we go into our last giveaway, we're going to take some Q&A. So you got to stay around if you're going to want the last giveaway of the Amazon gift card. So let's see here. We've got some questions. Okay, so the first one that came through is, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. How long does it typically take to implement a new survey program? That's a great question.
I can answer that. So we have a really great team of implementation managers who, as soon as you're ready and you've signed the contract, will meet with you to coordinate what makes sense for you. I can share with you that every portfolio is different, so we'll create a timeline that truly makes sense. Generally, 4 to 5 weeks is about the shortest time we can take to implement. And so the 2 things that really go into that are developing the questionnaires, which we have a really great set of standard questionnaires that are ready to plug and play, or it can be tweaked as necessary, and then also collecting the data. So ultimately, that's really the variable component that tends to differ. Some of our clients can click export on one of their systems. They can send us all of their tenant or resident information. They can send us all their property information with 1 or 2 clicks. If that doesn't sound like your company and you have maybe a group of systems or you don't have centralized data, then we'll work with you to make a timeline that makes sense. And usually that would be a little over a month then to do that.
All right. The next question here. How quickly do you begin to see data flow into the system to use in planning?
Yeah, and I'm happy to take that one. I apologize too. I'm not sure what's going on with my screen for you all to be able to see it, but this is an easy one to answer, and that is pretty much with the first survey response, you begin to see it flow into the data. So it's real time on your dashboard to be able to see it and be able to make that meaningful change or close the customer loop.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question here. Let me find a good one. What are your current response rates? I mean, that's important, right? So everyone can do a survey. Response rates are really critical. You want to see the data. So that's one of the areas that Kingsley is really soars in. So anyone want to share a little bit about the response rate?
I can share a bit on that, Amy. I'll tell you it varies by tenant type or property type. And so that range is roughly from, call it 22% to maybe 36%. I would say the employee surveys would probably have a higher response rate since you generally have more engagement from that population, right? But I would say generally for the ongoing resident surveys and also for the tenant surveys, you can aim to hit right around that mid-20 to mid-30% mark.
Yeah, and I think what we hear from individuals who run surveys that are not Kingsley, they're getting a 9 to 12%. So we're really proud of that, 20 to 30% that we're getting that engagement. And really that's with the experience of how many times do we send them? How do we send them? What is the subject line? How do we make sure that they're prepared for that survey to come? And that's all the trades of the secret that we cannot share, right? But that's why we're getting the response rate. Okay, so we're going to give our last and final giveaway. If you've got more questions, you can still keep putting them in the questions area and we'll make sure that someone responds to you. But our third giveaway, I'm waiting for, it looks like Pamela J. So Pamela J, you are the third and final winner. And so we will make sure that we circle up with you to make sure we have all of the right information to get that out to you. I'm thinking 3 Amazon gift cards sounds like a very awesome Christmas gift, right? For somebody. I was going to say birthday gift. I guess it could be a birthday gift as well. So we're going to wrap up our time here. First and foremost, I want to say thanks, Jay and Paul. You guys are a wealth of knowledge and you shared a lot of information today. And I really appreciate your expertise and bringing that to the people that are on the team. I also want to thank everybody else for just joining our webinar. We know this is a busy season, a busy time. So we really hope that you walk away with just a few ideas of how you can unlock some of that really important data to help you plan for 2024 and as we head into the new season. So we're here to help. If you dropped us a chat, we certainly will follow up with you immediately after this. We also have Jay and Paul's information on the slide right now. So you can connect with them personally if you want any additional information. But I hope that everyone has a happy and safe holiday. And this really concludes our webinar. So thank you guys so much and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you.